Welcome, everybody. Hello. It is good to see you. Hello. Welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Oh,
Appreciate you
loads of
coming
them
in
coming in.
here. Oh, loads of you guys popping in here right now. You
So
guys been
many.
waiting for this across the pond. Welcome to Across the Pond with Ahmed Baba and my brother James Matthewson from across the pond over in the UK. As you're coming in, tell us where you're coming in from. Hit us in the chat. You can tell my background is a little bit different, so I'm somewhere tropical right now, but we're always going to work no matter what. But smash that like button. I see some familiar faces. Jay, I see you in the chat. Hello. How are you guys doing? Coming in from Iowa, Rachel, uh, Martin from the USA. What's up? Um,
Look at this though. Look what I've got to deal with. I'm sitting here last night. I got back from London last night to Edinburgh, and the rain started lashing down. I got out of the train station. The rain was lashing, and
oh
the
no.
whole day it's been miserable and windy. And then I log on, and here's you in paradise, you know, with
Hey,
all the tropical vegetation behind you.
hey, I'm not a vacation person, but I've become one. My wife makes me take some trips. Not makes me, I enjoy it, but gets me away from my laptop, gets me away from some work sometimes. And this time I am still working, but we've got a more scenic view. And okay, I see some people in here. Okay, you're coming in, Georgina from Colorado, Wendy from California, Veronica from Maryland. I was born in Maryland. What's up? Nicole, hey, Leah from California. We have someone coming in from Florida. That's actually where I'm at right now. So we will reveal the location. Um,
I've just realised I looked up Martin Vasquez. I said that Lashin. I thought, where's Lashin? But I've just realised I just said Lashin, and he's
yeah, yeah.
probably thinking, oh, but yeah, Lashin is a very regular or common expression when the rain is almost horizontal. You know.
Yes. I mean, I'm sorry that you had to deal with that, and I'm over here in paradise. But I will say, in New York, we've had like really bad weather, so this has been a welcome reprieve. But still been tuned in, still working, still doing what we got to do. And James, how are you doing aside from the rain overall?
I'm very good. You know, I had a really exciting experience the other day. So I was down in London. I was doing some a big talk show called Cross Question, right, where you get live questions on a panel. And I was on with some government ministers, some other people, and I did some other TV in London. And while I was there, my friend works for the Prime Minister. He works for Keir Starmer. He's in his household, you know, kind of logistics and that kind of side of things. And he said, "Oh, you know, it was your birthday recently, and I know you've handed lots of petitions in at Downing Street. And Downing Street, many of those people listening will know, but those of you who don't, is basically our White House, right? It's where the Prime Minister lives. It's a street. The street's closed off, maximum security. You can't normally get in unless you have a meeting there, right? So he arranged for me to come and get my photo taken at the door, at the famous number 10 Downing Street door. And as I was standing there, he said, I've got an extra surprise for you. He said, you know, why don't we go in? I said, go in. No, you can't go in. So we went in, and I spent an hour in Downing Street wandering around. I
Okay.
sat in Churchill's armchair. I sat at the cabinet table. I mean, the history was phenomenal. But for someone who's been past it a million times, now you never get to go inside. And you see the famous. Those of you who've seen Love Actually, will remember Hugh Grant dancing down the stairs. That
Hmm.
staircase with all the Prime Minister's
Wow.
portrait. It was an incredible experience, mate. I loved it. Loved every second. Very lucky.
That's beautiful, man. And like getting to see that history is incredible. Sitting in Winston Churchill's chair. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about talk about a leader that we would need right now. We're gonna and that's honestly a good segue because what we're gonna talk about in this episode is the kind of leadership that we
Mm.
require at this moment, right? And how much of a contrast it is with Trump and Churchill, right? I mean, we're gonna get into the latest on the Iran war. For those of you coming in here now, we've got a lot of you in here. Thank you for being here. Smash that like button if you have not already. Become a subscriber to Ahmed Baba News and Uneducated James Matthewson's publication over there. And if you have not yet, consider becoming a paid subscriber because that is what powers this work. That's what allows us to, not only power our work, but maybe sometimes work from a location that allows you to deal with your mental health when your wife needs to go take a vacation and you end up going
Def-
somewhere tropical. But if you have not already, consider becoming a paid subscriber and backing what we're doing because we're going to be talking about something that Donald Trump doesn't really want us to point out, which is the contradictions in what he is saying. Earlier this week, we have Trump saying that first he says simultaneously that the war is won, but then also says, oh, we need to send more troops at the same time. The war is won, but the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, which makes zero sense. He says that now we're engaged in some peace talks, but Iran denies it, and Iran explicitly said no negotiations have been held with the U.S. It's fake news used to manipulate the financial and oil markets and escape the quagmire in which the U.S. and Israel are trapped. Now, yikes, right? It's pretty politically savvy thing for him to say, but also it's one of those things where obviously we don't believe Trump and the Trump administration. Iran, maybe they're saying it to save face, or maybe they are telling the truth and there actually are negotiations. There are none. Either way, where we're at right now is a place where we're getting lies from all sides here.
The very fact that there's a question mark over that, mate, right? Like, look, what do we do every day? We analyze. We look at this stuff, we comment on it, right? We're pretty kind of good at doing that now, I would say, from both of our experience. We can look at something and dissect it. The very fact that we are having to question which side the monstrous regime, that is anti-democracy, anti-authoritarian, and Iran. Well, got you there. No, but yeah, the fact that they're both one and the same, and that we don't know which side is lying. At one time, it would have been obvious, right? I don't believe most of what comes out of the Iranian regime. Of course, I don't. But how can you possibly believe Donald Trump on the other side? So, in this situation, it just shows us how far we've fallen when even America's allies don't know who is telling the truth between, this regime that we were all united against some time ago, and now the very fact that because Donald Trump lies on an hourly basis, minute by minute, everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. I think I heard him when he was standing doing his, I think it was a bit by the helicopter, by what's it called? Is it Marine One, the helicopter?
Marine One, yeah.
So, he was standing beside it doing this, kind of bit to camera before he got on. And in that minute that he spoke for, I counted 6 contradictions in a minute of himself. He said, we've killed them all. We've killed all the leadership of Iran, but we're dealing with the leadership of Iran. And also the Ayatollahs, we're going to deal with the Ayatollahs, but they're all gone. They're dead. The Strait of Hormuz, I might manage it with the Ayatollahs, but we'll see. None of it made any sense. And that's the problem. Like, of course he's saying what he's saying to manipulate the markets. And I think we'll come on to this probably in due course, but the very fact that I think the markets are not just being manipulated to be in his favor, but there's also an opportunity for some people, we don't know who, but some people with lots of money to make even more.
I got some facts on that in a little bit we'll get to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but that's where we are in this strange space between a theocratic, apocalyptic, regime in the Middle East that we don't support and that we would like to see the end of, and trying to work out if they're telling the truth where Donald Trump isn't. It's just staggering, absolutely staggering.
It's staggering, and it's very clear that Trump wants an off-ramp here. It's very clear that they're internally regretting this impulsive decision, right? And it's what we've been talking about. I sent this post about how Trump's everything that a president shouldn't be. He's erratic. He is chaotic in a job that requires stillness. He's selfish in a job that requires empathy. He's indecisive and sporadic and impulsive in a job that just needs someone that has a steady hand that can make these decisions. Could you imagine if he was overseeing the Cuban Missile Crisis and not JFK? What decisions would he have made, right? So that's what we're missing here from the presidency. And then on top of that, along those lines, one of the things I wanted to get into before we get to some of the insider trading facts here is that there's new reporting this morning from NBC News about Trump's daily briefings. I'm not sure if you caught this. It's really interesting.
The video briefing.
Yes,
is that right? Yeah,
exactly. And what's been happening here, basically, one of the reasons why Trump's saying we're winning is because he's being managed. People around him are briefing him and apparently, reportedly, 2-minute montages. And someone, an official described it to NBC News as videos of stuff blowing up. All right? They're basically showing him the most successful strikes and briefing him on with these 2-minute montages. As we know, Trump historically, first term, has no attention span, needed like basically picture books as his briefings in his presidential daily briefings. And basically now he's getting these 2-minute montages of stuff blowing up, being told that all these strikes are successful and not being given key information about what is potentially, not potentially, but what is happening there that is negative. A president needs all the facts to be able to make judgment calls, make key decisions in war. And he's being basically given a propaganda reel of his strikes because his ego is so fragile that he has to have sycophants around him who are just feeding him
Oh
lies.
man.
He does not
At
have a
this
stable grip on reality.
No, at this stage, look, tear it all up, put a fucking goldfish in a bowl, and let it decide America's foreign policy, right? Because it would have more of an attention span for the detail than he does. It's like bloody finding Nemo. It's like Dory, trying to figure out what this region that is steeped in history, the region which is the birthplace of civilization that goes back as far as our species does, and he's trying to comprehend that in 2-minute segments that you would show like an iPad kid, trying to keep their focus with like a little video going at the same time while you're trying to gentle parent them. Who do we think in the administration has the woeful job of doing this? Is it that, I forget her name? Is it Susie?
Susie
The
Wiles.
Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. I've always kind of seen her as an almost like matriarchal figure with Trump, the way she manages him. Do we think that it's probably her influence that's doing that?
No, I mean, I think what we're coming to find is that she's actually she's just a chief enabler. She like presents herself as someone who's kind of managing him, but in reality, what she's become is an efficiency machine for sycophancy and loyalty, basically.
Okay.
So like
Yeah.
but what they're doing is they are managing him though. And they've been managing his information flow to basically keep him happy. Like he's a child. And they're saying like, look, the war's successful. And again, like what we've been talking about, the president needs a firm grip on reality. He needs a firm grip on he or she, hopefully she in the future, hopefully
Yeah.
we really need a she after all this, needs a firm grip on reality, needs to be able to have the accurate depiction and have the mental health capacity or the ego or, the lack of an ego to be able to say like, to compartmentalize and not say like, oh, bad thing in war, bad person showing me negative image, they're bad. Maybe I should fire this person. That's what's happening. They're afraid of pissing him
Yeah,
off
totally.
and they don't
It's
want to
that
give him bad
association,
information.
isn't it? And it's
Yes.
so the funny thing is, I did it years ago. I did a dementia awareness training course. Came to Parliament in the UK, and they were trying to raise awareness about dementia. And one thing they spoke of during that time was that people with dementia may not be able to associate you directly with their feelings about you, right? And this is through all stages of dementia, but they will associate you with how you make them feel. Right. So the last time, if you had an argument with them, the last time you saw them, then they might feel negatively towards you for months, but they don't know why. It's just because that feeling associates with a person. I'm not making speculations about his, whether he has dementia or not, but it's almost like that simple with him, isn't it? If someone makes him feel bad or sad or angry or anything like that, then they're out. They're done with. He doesn't want them around. It's base impulse. It's animalistic, is what he is. It's like, he's hungry 1 minute, so he orders McDonald's. The next minute he's happy, so things are going well, and he tweets about someone he likes. The next minute he's sad or he's angry, so the world feels his wrath. And it is just minute to minute kind of impulsive kind of reaction.
Exactly. And it's like I've said this often. We've been living in the volatility of this one man's mind. That is what's happening. We are we are living within the insecurity of this person who cannot sit still, who is just so insecure and miserable within himself that he has to inflict it on everyone else. He having a bad day, Robert Mueller happens to die that day. So you know what? Let me post, I'm glad he's dead. Just like, I know that's off topic here, but it's like it's within the same vein of just this total void of morals and decency within this presidency, to the point where it's unbelievable and absurd to me that he's still being enabled by these people around him. These Republican lawmakers would never tell their children to behave this way, and yet they think the highest office in the land needs to be occupied by the person of this poor of character. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
And they'll just shift the bar wherever. And interestingly, this has happened internationally, and I've kind of riled against it for a long time because I've been like, look, it really annoys me that on the international stage that we move to adapt, but we have to, right? Because it's not just that there's this insane man
Yeah.
who's like that we're all reacting to. He's an insane man with, I think Winston Churchill said you have to, in international diplomacy, speak softly and carry a big stick, right? He's got the biggest stick in the world, right? The US military. So it's this madman who is brandishing this knife around the place. It's incredibly sharp that we're all going to get hurt by potentially, because he controls it. And that's
Exactly.
the thing that is making everybody bend to his will. And it's not necessarily, I always get annoyed because I'm like, we need to push back with Keir Starmer on the Iran war. I've seen him push as hard as I would ever think I would see him push. And he's not a pushy person, but him saying, we're not sending this, but we will let you use the Chagos Islands, we will let you use Diego Garcia, all of these things. It is just constantly the fear aspect of what Donald Trump could do if he was unhappy with you. And I think that
Yes.
is it's that kind of keeps people alert to following the madness.
Exactly. And that's the core of all of this. And that's why, I'm glad we have I love our conversations because we get to the core of what's going on. It's not just like the surface level. These core character flaws are the reason why we're here. They're what's driving these Iran decisions. They're what's driving his motivation. And yes, he loves also another aspect of him. When he was younger, he got really into manifestation and positivity books, and like getting into like just positive self-talk. Like he literally lives in a world in which he has to create his own reality. So he only speaks positively. That's why everything's great and fantastic and tremendous all the time. So he's now
Yeah.
trying to happy talk his way through this war. Meanwhile, Iran, like if we're looking at geopolitically, and again, everybody, we're going to get to the insider trading stuff later because there's so many facts I want to get through that aspect of this. But like when it comes to this the lack of international diplomacy here, Iran basically explicitly asking for for Vance and Rubio to basically be the point person because they're tired of working with Witkoff and Kushner because they didn't understand the region. We're getting to a point where the off ramp is not going to just like Trump just can't decide when the war is over. And we're seeing that now. Iran gets a vote. Iran knew that they had the Strait of Hormuz as their biggest leverage point. And now we're in a place where any deal that comes now will be worse than the deal that
Yeah.
could have been cut before this war started, because you have a more extremist Iran
Mhm.
with a regime that has been decapitated down to more extreme elements where the IRGC is expanding their power, and the IRGC has like it's called the Mosaic leadership. Their military command has a Mosaic leadership where basically it's decentralized. So if
Yeah.
you take out different command centers, it's
It doesn't
decentralized.
matter.
There's no central command to dismantle. So they're just like playing whack-a-mole
Which
with
again,
this leadership.
every intelligence agent who would brief the president knew that. So it's
Exactly.
it's it's not a question of whether he knew it or not. It's the fact that he didn't care either way, And I think
Yeah.
even if Putin, can you imagine Putin sending? We would laugh, right? We'd be like Putin sending to negotiate his son-in-law, right, and his former real estate agent. We'd be like, oh, right, okay, well, this guy's not serious at all, is he? So, of course, Iran are like, no, we won't speak to your daughter's husband. And no, we won't speak to this bloke who ran real estate in Florida for you. Like, it's insanity. We want to speak to people who know this. And the fact that Marco Rubio, who, let's be honest, himself is, as has absolutely no moral
Oh, of
guidance
course.
whatsoever. So they're not looking for that. They're just looking for someone who understands how the world works. And the fact that him and JD Vance are still seen as that is a miracle in itself. It's the only saving grace for the administration.
Exactly. And also, I guess you can maybe draw a glean of hope from that because, just like if you look tactically, Vance has been separating himself from this. Rubio even trying to people trying to back away because they see it as a failure. So the fact that they're increasingly being involved potentially could mean the Trump administration is really trying
Yeah.
to end this, right? Like I think Rubio and Vance coming forefront here means that that now they want to be associated with the ending of the war. So I think that's one way to look at it. But also at the same time, it's not Trump's decision to make whether the war ends. And Iran now feels emboldened. They feel emboldened, and also they feel like how could they trust the Trump administration that tore up the JCPOA in 2018 in the same year that their State Department openly said, Trump's State Department said that Iran was complying with the deal. And then you tear it up the same year. Iran's thinking, how can I was just
Yeah.
having talks with them, with his son-in-law, you know, and then the
Yeah.
next week the supreme leader's killed. So now there's a trust factor here. And of course, Iran's a horrible regime. You know, we always got to like caveat that, you know, but at the
Cool.
same time, another one of the character flaws of Trump is lack of empathy. Is you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the enemy and to be able
Yes.
to see what's really motivating them. And he's incapable of doing that. Texas said, we're
Yeah.
negotiating with bombs. No, that's not how this
So
works.
that's not how it works, man. Like, Hegseth just every day is trying to outdo himself with his dreadfulness, you know, to try and prove that he's, you know, that a TV anchor can become somebody who is in charge of the most powerful military in the world. Well, he shouldn't. He shouldn't be. And then on top of that, you know, it's such a sad state of affairs when, as you rightly point out, we remind people regularly how we feel about the Iranian regime. When a regime that hangs gay people from cranes can no longer trust you, what does that say about you? You know, that's the reflection on Trump. Is like these monsters who were governed by nothing else other than process on the international stage, and even then were trying to bend it to their will. They don't trust you. If they don't trust you, then that's the sad state of it. I think when I read Obama's or most of it, I must confess I never finished it because it was like that, you know, his book when he finished being president. And one of the things I was really struck by was his understanding and his ability to say that during the election campaign, he called the shots, right? Which is when he needed to. And after he was elected and in office, he was like a different person. He would go around the table and he would get 4 different opinions and then he would compare them and then he would choose the best, right? That is the
Yes.
opposite of happening. What we're getting here is Donald Trump starts with his opinion, and then he finds all of the opinions that agree with that and align with it, and then runs
Yes.
forward.
I'm so glad you bring that up because again, it keeps going back to the leadership void, the total lack of leadership capability that Trump has. The president needs to be discerning. Yeah, I've read Obama's memoir as well, The Promised Land, about, you know, his first term.
Yeah,
And you the way he takes you through his thought process. I encourage everyone to read it if you haven't. The way he takes you through his thought process and deliberations, it's stoicism. It's the stillness we've been talking about. I started reading that book that we talked about the other day as well, and it actually, Stillness is
really.
Key. This book, yeah,
Yeah,
right, by Ryan Holiday, talks about leaders in history and how they use stillness in key moments to deliberate in moments of crisis. So it talked about JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis, about how he was getting all this advice to just bomb the missile sites in Cuba, to just you know, everyone was just telling him do bomb, and instead he took a beat and sat with it, and he decided, no, we're going to do some variation. We're going to do this kind of blockade, blockade situation, and kind of call their bluff, show that we're tough, but not escalate, because you get beyond a point where you can't de-escalate. And you could go, you go back. It goes back to Lincoln. The book talks about his deliberative process, and Obama has the same talent where you can sit in the stillness, make these difficult decisions, not be reactive, take into account context and history and the motivation of the opponent, and then use that motivation to drive to a peaceful outcome, or an outcome that is mutually
yeah,
beneficial, right? Like, you have to be able to give Iran some kind of credible off ramp here that doesn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be able to create a solution here that Iran could tout as some kind of victory, you know? And I know
yeah.
that sounds crazy, but that's how diplomacy works, is where it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah,
you've already humiliated them. You've already done all this stuff. You've already proven you can't be trusted. What solution can we make now that isn't just bomb, 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 kill, kill, kill? Human beings don't respond to that. And Trump is incapable of projecting himself in the shoes of others. So he's just saying, I respond to force, so therefore they must respond to just force and domination.
yeah. It's exactly the thing with him, and it's almost the chief giveaway, right? For everything that he does is projection, because he doesn't have the capability to empathize or understand people, and I don't think he understands the world. I think he looks at the world that I don't think he understands why people act certain ways. I'm not sympathizing with Donald Trump, but I do have sympathy with, being confused by how the world works. You have 2 options when it comes to that, right? I'm autistic. I was diagnosed when I was 20. I've spent my whole life being like, what? Like, I don't understand how that works. I don't understand why people act like this. When I say this, why do they react like this? I understand that. But at the same time, the response to that is not, I'm going to push my will on everyone else and everyone has to bend to me. That's what a narcissist would do. That's what Trump does.
Yes.
The way you have to do it is say, no, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to take it in and I'm going to study this world, right? My biggest, out of all the hyper fixations I've ever had and special interests I've ever had, the biggest one is people, right? I want to know, I want to understand why they feel the way they do and do. And I feel like there's that in the likes of Obama and the likes of JFK, Lincoln, where there's that ability to say, right, okay, well, I might not get this. I might not understand these people. I don't need to like them. I don't need to love them. I don't need to be one of them, but I need to understand what drives them, because only
Yes.
then I give them what they want and try and dress it up that way. And then that is how diplomacy and understanding works. People from other sides of the planet can't always get along in harmony. They have different opinions, they have different cultures, they have different, but it is about bridging that gap. And that is what we
Yes.
elect. That's what we pay. Not only elect, we pay these leaders our tax money. We give them our money to do this. We should be picking people who can bridge those gaps, not do the opposite. And it staggers me. I think I saw polling yesterday, was it 36% of people in America still support Donald Trump and still like Donald Trump? Obviously, there'll be counter polls, there always are, but it just amazes me that people still see this way of dealing with themselves, and they would deal with the world and think that it's the right way to do things. And it's clearly not.
No, exactly. And, you know, the projection is key. And that's all really well said. And also, just everybody in the chat, we see you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you commenting. If you have
Yeah.
questions too, throw them in. We're here for a little bit longer. We're going to keep talking, chatting here. Smash that like button while you're here. It boosts this video in the algorithm and boosts the post after it's published. And if you have not, smash the subscribe button. There's 200 of you here. We appreciate you being here live. But if you have not already, hit the subscribe button to make sure that you get notified of our future live posts. And then also consider becoming a paid subscriber, because that is what powers this work. And that is what keeps this independent journalism thing going. So thank you. And yes, on this note of Trump, like, one of the things that I really is just kind of a meta observation of him is that I don't think he perceives other people as real people. I genuinely think, like, he thinks everyone, do you game? Do you game at all? Yeah. So like, he thinks he's the only player. He thinks he's the only player character, and everyone else is an NPC. Everyone else is just this non-player character that don't really have sentience, and he can just exert. He's the only one. That's how he behaves. You see the way he exposed the cancer diagnosis of a lawmaker, like in front of Mike Johnson. He's the only sentient being here, and I know this because when I was a kid, one of my thoughts was like, I used to ask this question to my parents, and I didn't really know how to like word it, but it was like, am I the only one that sees through my eyes? Is how I would ask it. And it would be like a question of like, are other people sentient? It was kind of like what I was thinking as a kid. And it's like, that's kind of a thought that all kids have. And I feel like he kind of had that and then just never addressed it, and just kind of like went the rest of his life assuming other people aren't sentient beings. Like, that's how he behaves. Like, he doesn't care if people die for his cause. He has a total detachment, a sociopathy nearly, of like, of a disconnection between his actions and consequences that is pathological. And so, like, I know we're getting really deep in this man's head, but like, that's kind of how I think he operates, because it's the only explanation.
Yeah, we have to, because the explanations aren't logical, are they? And when you look at it like that, and isn't it funny though? Isn't it funny just to take a moment that we still, all of us, and everyone in this chat, because they're all agreeing, lots of people are saying the same, about him, that we are taking more time to understand this man than he's ever taken to understand any in his own life, his own children, his partners, his whatever, his people he's worked with. We are taking more time to understand him. And I think that comes back to the thing, not to sound superior about this, but like, we are better than him. And I had a debate the other day when I was on this cross question thing. And afterwards, this kind of UK MAGA woman who I was debating with, we were walking through Westminster afterwards. And it was late at night, and she was going to the tube. I was going to a different tube station, but we were continuing our chat from the debate, right? And I was kind of, we weren't agreeing, but we were doing it fairly politely with each other and kind of venting at each other. And she kind of, the insight that I got from it and that I took away from it was it because she said, "Oh well, sometimes I think you guys on the left or you liberals think that you're better than some of these people like Donald Trump," and I just instantly said, "Yeah, I am. I'm sorry, like I am because I know that like how he is not considering anybody else in what
Yeah.
he's doing. And that's what makes you like I know it sounds infantile to kind of boil things down to good and bad or evil or good or but sometimes you do have to realize you're like, yes, being a good person is about how you interact with other people. It's nothing to do with yourself. Right. Very little of it, there's a base that comes from yourself, obviously, and how you treat yourself. But how you interact with the world and how you treat other people, that's the key part of it, right? That's what makes you
Yes.
good or makes you bad. And I know for a fact that we are better than those people because they are choosing, they are making choices, and they are taking actions that we can try and understand. We can think about the psychology of it and we can understand it till the cows come home, but it doesn't make it acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, being a good person is the ultimate, uh is what makes that's like the ultimate goal. There's
Yeah.
nothing else
Yeah.
really gives you the quality of being, I think achieving the highest level of humanity. If it's how you treat people, right? And I think that's an important point too, because when it comes to, how people who don't have morals see people with morals, is it goes down to this other thing you're talking about. Where like this person said to you, we seem to think we have moral superiority and liberals, right?
Yeah.
And we saw this come out in the previous woke era, with some of the people kind of like censoring people and all that. But one of the things here is that people who don't have morals and don't have empathy, like Trump, project their worldview onto other people.
Yeah,
So
of
they're
course.
assuming everyone else is operating from that same worldview. So I can break it down a little bit further, where it's like, for example, where Trump was talking about the fallen soldiers, and John Kelly said he called them suckers and losers when he was touring
Mhm.
Europe. Trump could not put himself in the shoes of someone who's self-sacrificing. So they must be suckers and losers for having died for nothing, right? Because he said, what was in it for them, right? So when you are a bad person like Trump is, and you see people who are out here being good, being decent, you're thinking they're performing decency. You don't
Eh,
think they're actually decent, right? So
yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
he he projects his worldview onto them. He's thinking, my whole life is a performance. My whole
Mhm.
life is this. Like Lindsey Graham, for example, is a prime example. There's an anecdote of him like telling Adam Schiff how good of a job he was doing during the impeachment hearings, because they think it's all performance art. They're
Yeah.
projecting their worldview onto everyone else. So if I'm performing this indecency over here on the Republican side, the good guys are virtue signaling. Because
Yeah, of course.
it's all a game. It's all an amoral game. No one's really good. There's no really good or bad. There's just performers. And I think that's how Trump sees the world. And that's why people say, like, when they see these good people who kind of feel they have moral support superiority over them, they're thinking, what? You're just a virtue signaler performer. You're not, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Because they can't wrap their mind around self sacrifice. I know we're
Yeah.
getting super meta on it, but like, I
No, I
just wanted
love
to
it,
bring.
man. Love it. It's totally, you're right. And and the video game analogy is perfect. It's that main character syndrome, right? And isn't
Yeah.
it, and it always annoys me, the games that I've played, and I know you've like gaming as well. The games that I hate the most, right, are the ones where you all of a sudden, you're some knight or a warrior or whatever. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, you're the hero. You've
Yeah.
got all the power. All of a sudden you're part of some connected thing that you didn't know you were part of. Everything centers around you. It's so unrealistic because that's not how the world works. Everyone else in that universe then becomes a pawn for you and your will, right? That's not what we want. And that is the reverse of what democratic elected office should be. It's about serving and it's about actual self-sacrifice. You are sacrificing, not to come back to Obama again. God, I'll lose all my left-wing British followers who don't like Obama, right? But I have issues with Obama over certain things as well. But still, you look at how he conducted himself and how he could have conducted himself. And what we often
Yes.
don't look at is what people didn't do. We look at what they did do. We need to sometimes look at what they didn't do and what they could have done. Because, you could do in situations where you've got 4 or 5 different options in how you act. The path not taken is sometimes a lot more of a better indicator as to how somebody is as a person than the path that did
Yes.
take.
No, exactly, because decency is not just something you are; it's a choice. It's a
Yeah,
lifestyle. Every day you make character affirming decisions that promote the fact that you're a good person, that
yeah,
empowers your character, right? And yes, all you guys in the chat, someone said, I said, I'm sorry for getting too meta. Someone said, Jay said, this is what we want from you and James. It always goes deep, and you always tell us, why we're here. Yes, we got to talk about these psychological things that are going on within Trump, the
yeah.
things that motivate people, and it goes deeper than just like mixed messaging and like the tactics. These are the real things driving these people. So I'm glad we were able to break all that down. And again, if you have not yet, hit the subscribe button, become a paid subscriber, and smash that like button, because we're out
Do.
here doing independent journalism. So on that note of Pat's not taken, there are plenty of times where the Obama administration, Obama himself, didn't do insider trading when they probably could have. And what we're seeing here is this week, I have some stats. There's so much evidence where, reporting from Axios, the Financial Times, watch stock watchers on Twitter. So we have a $580 million oil futures purchase. Basically, $580 million oil futures flooded the market in a sudden spike 16 minutes before Trump sent his Truth Social post on Monday saying that there's peace talks and we're all good, right? And then all of a sudden, we see the stock surge, and over here, just five. And then there's another one. A stock watcher on X, Chris Murphy's talked about this. Said just 5 minutes before Trump's post, 1.5 billion in S&P 500 future contracts was bought, while 192 million in oil futures was sold. Reportedly as well. 5 minutes before the same Truth Social post, and then you keep going down. This pattern's happened before. In January, a trader turned $32,000 into $400,000 betting on the capture of Maduro. We've seen similar stuff on this before Liberation Day last year with tariffs. We don't know exactly who is doing it, but if we had an actual real regulatory regime, there would be investigation ongoing for what is very clearly not a coincidence. This is a pattern, and it appears there's some very real insider trading happening, people profiting off of this war and getting foreknowledge on Trump creating these fake announcements of imminent end to the war.
I think, I mean, it really does. Like, you have to stop, and it kind of just it shakes you to your core that it's so blatant and that it's so transparent as well. Like it's obvious. Like it's so obvious. And having seen how little repercussion there are for people who commit financial crimes, and going back to the likes of the 2008 financial crisis, the housing stuff, the CDC stuff, and how few people ever paid the price for what they did there. I know for a fact that the people who were involved in doing this will probably face no justice either. But somebody made the fact that, somebody made $500 million from one trade, undoubtedly because of the time and using insider information to do so. The fact that they did that when people can't afford to buy a carton of eggs, people can't put fuel in their car. It's unforgivable. Like these are the kind of things that toppled governments and leaders in history. This is
Yeah,
this is like the let them eat cake of the French Revolution.
French Revolution. Yeah, it's
This is what led to people being pulled from their positions of power and privilege because they were just enriching themselves and their friends at the cost of every other person and those people who put them there. And on top of that, they have the control of the policy that is making people's lives miserable. I've got a wonderful American in my life, not just you, mate. Obviously, you are. That you're the other wonderful American in my life. But I got a parcel for my birthday from this American, and you can see there the customs to pay, the fee to pay, right? That I've never had that before, and I looked onto the breakdown because they've got a sticker on it, and it says charges there, and the charge is some tariffs. So I had to pay £26 to collect this parcel for the first time. And sometimes in the past, that's been things like value-added tax from the UK side. but I've never had it where it's been tariff goods on gifts that have been transferred because those gifts are, American specific only. And it's because some of the stuff is from Trader Joe's, some Trader Joe's stuff. And Trader Joe's is only an American brand, which I don't know if people know, but obviously there's no other Trader Joe's anywhere else in the world. They're just in America. So because of that, I've paid the tariff on it. And the fact that that is because of his choice, like, I'm not saying it's a hardship for me, but the fact that that's been put onto US businesses, on businesses that are trading around the world as well, and that is all because of his choice, whilst enriching himself and his friends. It's unforgivable.
It's insane. It's unforgivable. It's insane. The fact that he's literally, through unilaterally his own whim, levying these tariffs on consumers, on people abroad and at home, everyday Americans, everyday Europeans, everyday people who are just trying to get by, charging them, while he's not only apparently people within the administration potentially or their families profiting off of the war with these insider trading tips, but also blatantly enriching themselves with crypto grifts, billions of dollars, money being funneled directly to him and his family. Don Jr. giving contracts to, getting contracts to companies he's investing in. All of this grift happening, blatant grift, profiting from the war where people have been killed. It's disgusting, and it's the kind of thing that is going to lead to a wipeout in the midterms. And on this note, people talking, I see Robin White in there talking about Kalshi and Polymarket, the prediction markets. I think we need robust reform here to prevent insider trading. And it's not just banning all officials. Frankly, I think all government officials, that are at high levels of information need to be banned from trading stocks while in office. Legislative branch, executive branch, judiciary, whatever, banned from trading office while they're in office, trading stocks. And then also these prediction markets, Kalshi, Polymarket, we need that to be totally banned when it comes to I don't know where the line is on where like maybe you just leave it to sports, but it feels like these prediction markets are just ripe for betting here and insider trading. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking right now on Polymarket here, and the top thing, not just politics, because there's subsections, right? Politics, awards, crypto, basketball, music. The top one right now, 100% rating, is will Israel launch a major ground offensive in Lebanon by March the 31st? And if I put, there's 63 million US dollars being betted on that right now. If I say no, and I stick, 200 US dollars on there, if March 31st comes around and Israel hasn't done that, I will win back 200,000 US dollars. Now, this is not me promoting that and saying go and do this at all. I think it just shows how immoral this is, because speculation's always been something that people have looked down on, and rightly so, because these are things that matter. This is people gambling on people's lives, right? If Israel do that, the deaths will increase in Lebanon. There've already been people dying every single day in Lebanon. And the fact that people are sitting from the comfort of their home, trading on these people's futures, that just does not sit right with me at all,
Exactly.
Gambling in itself is questionable. And the fact that the US, of all places, where you can't actually gamble, gambling is illegal in most of the continental US. You have to do it in places like, Native American kind of casinos that sprung up to counter that gambling legislation, all those things. The fact that is now online is just a completely unregulated space.
Exactly,
it's just totally wrong.
Yeah, and I just want to say, someone in the one of my friends who I come on MS Now with popped in here, Rana Insana. He's on CNBC all the time. He actually did a great, he just popped in here, the live. I see you there. What's up, Ron? He actually wrote a great Substack on the trades, on the 1.5 billion in S&P 500 contracts that were made right before the Trump's Truth Social post. So I recommend you guys go and checking that out too as well. There's some really good reporting, and that's that. On that note, it's good. Like, more mainstream media outlets are talking about this. We're seeing a lot of people openly questioning whether or not there is insider trading happening. And that's it's really something I hope moves the needle, and I think Americans are being informed on it. And also, yeah, a lot of people in the chat. We see you. Appreciate you requesting us to talk about specific things. I see you, Commander Cool. We're kind of having we've been having focused conversations, truncating different topics, and we got to the insider trading. The person's here just asking us really to dissect Israel's role in this, which we have in various contexts. But we can get to that here in a little bit. But if you want, also you can also go check out our other lives. We've talked about Netanyahu robustly, but we really want to talk about some of the, the basic news going on here. But yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the insider trading here, it's ridiculous. It's not okay. It's something that should be regulated, and I think the next Democratic administration needs to take this on. And on that front, Netanyahu, do you have any takes on just kind of like where he's headed? Because right now we're seeing, while Trump's trying to tout this peace talks, Israel is going further into Lebanon. Over a million people have been displaced. We're seeing extremism risks here. We're seeing the more terrorist cells probably going to pop up out of this. Like, how can you simultaneously say the U.S. is pushing for an end to this war while Netanyahu is clearly hell bent on extending this much longer because he has an election he likely probably wants to cancel in the fall, right?
Yeah. It's a perfect cycle, I think. Israel makes the terrorists for them, and then the US is able to use those terrorists as an excuse to conduct whatever it wants. It's that cycle of enablement, right? And my language on this is strong, but I do have to clarify because, unfortunately, there are people who often take things too far. I despise anti-Semitism. We've had an anti-Semitic attack in London the other day. The biggest cause of anti-Semitism on earth right now is Bibi Netanyahu, right? When he uses anti-Semitism as a shield against actions that he should be criticized for that are nothing to do with Jewish culture, Jewish faith. What he does is he maligns Jewish people who have nothing to do with the state of Israel around the world. Most of the people I know who are Jewish in Britain are on pro-Palestinian marches every weekend at the moment, right? It is not given hand in glove that they would be, supportive of Israel's actions at all. But we end up with this increase in hatred towards Jews internationally because of it. And Bibi Netanyahu alone, that should be enough to sink him and finish him off, because the man has got his own corruption allegations against him, of course, which he's faced for years. But it's so obvious that none of this is about the future of the state of Israel or the people of Israel, right? And I'm always careful with how I criticize countries. Same why you will say the Iranian regime, why you will hear me say the Israeli government, because peoples of countries do not, there are as many people who didn't vote for Netanyahu in Israel as did, right? And I understand that people's anger at a government. People can be angry at the UK government, but I'm not taking their blame, right? They're nothing to do with me. That's the separation.
No, and that's a separation that I really want to make too, because someone in the chat said that, I want to also clarify and push back on that on something in the chat. Someone said Israel lost the right to have a country. I will say no, they have not, right? So like that is why we make the distinction, because there's a line, right? There is anti-Semitism. There is, trying to claim, we need to displace these people type thing, or, that whole, you can't get to that, right? It's this line of like Netanyahu specifically, the Israeli people, we want them to be safe. We want them to have, we want them to have a place. We want them to thrive. But we see the government itself right now is setting back the Israeli cause, because Netanyahu has really, his conduct, specifically him and his far-right coalition. Gavin Newsom did an interview too, where he also recently separated the two, because I think that separation is very important, because I try to be very careful too. I mean, I'm married into a Jewish family myself, and first off, if you think you dislike Netanyahu or hate Netanyahu, you are not hating to your full capacity. You need to meet a progressive Jewish person, and they will tell you what's really going on with Netanyahu. All right, but basically, there's that line, there's that fine line to walk where I used to publish back at Rant Media, the startup I ran, we used to partner with the Center for Analysis of the Radical Right in Europe. And I think I've talked to you about this before. We would publish papers from PhDs and literally I was editing all these articles on extremism, and a lot of it was on anti-Semitism. So like I got a real knowledge of like the tropes and the history. So I'm very,
Yeah.
very careful. And I'm glad you brought that distinction up because we do not want to get into these tropes. And that's the problem with Netanyahu is doing is his extremism, his violence, frankly, and the way he's conducted this, what he's done in Gaza, what he's doing now in Lebanon.
Yeah.
When you displace this amount of people, it then feeds those who are hateful of Jews, and it gives them, like that's why I never prop up Tucker Carlson when he's criticizing this stuff
Yeah.
because Tucker Carlson's got other agendas.
Because he's doing
Tucker
it. He's
Carlson's got
doing
some
it from
anti-Semitic.
a
He's got
yeah.
some white nationalist stuff going on there that people can't forget. So we can't forget he was literally running um on great replacement theory in Fox News,
Totally.
right? So it's one of these things where we have to be nuanced and lay this at the feet of the people who deserve the blame and not blame the entire Jewish diaspora for what
Totally.
Netanyahu is doing, right? And you made that
Yeah.
distinction very well. And I just wanted to bring it up even further because nuance gets robbed from these conversations. And I'm glad that we're on the same page.
And I totally understand the emotions behind it. Look, Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza, in my opinion. Like, that's what they've done. I am wholly critical of that. I've spent ages. I'm not, I've been advised not to travel to Israel. As a critic of the Israeli government, that's, that's how regularly I've criticized them. But I will not step over the line. And look, it makes you unpopular sometimes in some online circles where people want to boil things down to a simple black and white. It's not a simple black and white. I don't, even as a concept, and we won't get too deep into this today because it takes a lot of time up, but I don't even like Zionism as a concept. I don't like ethno-states. I don't like the idea of one state being for one people, right? I just don't like that idea. And historically, yes, I know what happened to the Palestinian people. It was despicable, right? The Nakba over there, the way that was carved up by the European powers and how Israel was created. I am critical of that. Similar with Ireland, right? So with Northern Ireland, I believe in a united Ireland, even as a British person. But that doesn't mean that can justify the criticism of Jewish people anywhere in the world, right? A Jewish person here in Edinburgh has absolutely nothing to do with the actions of Israel. Like that's, and if you find yourself crossing that line, then you are not a friend of mine and you're not an ally of mine. And I got messages about Iran, the same. How dare you criticize the Iranian regime, stick to your lane, stick in your lane and criticize Trump as you should do on the left? Well, no, I'll criticize both. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for friends. I'm not looking to make friends doing.
Yes.
I'm looking to speak truth to power. And
Exactly.
everywhere there are men in every country on earth who are destroying this planet and oppressing their own people, I'll criticize them. I don't care what side, if I'm supposed to agree with them politically or not.
No, 100%, 100%. And that's the stuff I get on as well, where it's like we need nuance in this conversation. Right now, algorithms are incentivized to promote black and white commentary, to promote unnuanced rage bait, uh, simplistic explanations for very complex problems. And that's not what you and I stand for. That's not the kind of journalism we do. That's not the kind of commentary we do. And we're on the same page there where it's like, you
Don't let
can't.
them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm going to simultaneously criticize the Trump administration and simultaneously criticize the Iranian regime while also wondering, you know, what better future we can have for the Iranian people. Or I'll criticize Netanyahu while also being concerned about the Israeli people. And obviously I'll look out for the Palestinians, but also be furious at Hamas for what they've done, which like we can't skirt. Like I see a lot of people on the left too. A lot of people on the left
what they've done
too.
to Palestinians as well,
What they've done to Palestinians. A lot of people skirt over Hamas, and it's like you cannot skirt over.
You're fighting for a people if you're oppressing that own people themselves. This whole line of, and sometimes it feels quite simple, but don't fall for it, right? Netanyahu's biggest achievement will be creating more anti-Semites around the world, because what that does is allow him to point to those people every time. I mean, the other day, this attack in London, 3 ambulances that were owned by the Jewish community in London, in Golders Green, a big Jewish community, were burnt. And then a group took responsibility for it. And it was a group that is basically attacking Jewish communities in other countries, Germany, Britain, other countries, to blame them for Israel's actions, right? So this is that this is a prime example of that. Who was the first person to come out and make a statement about it? Netanyahu, followed by Isaac Herzog, right, the president of Israel, right? They made statements about it. And my point was, why are they making statements about actions happening in Britain and Europe? Because it benefits them. It allows them to then say our war is justified. There are people just like the Ayatollahs in Iran who want people to believe this is a holy war. This is a war of some kind of importance and it has to happen. And it's about how cultures are incompatible with each other. All of those people, I'm going to use an expression, an old Northeast English expression here, right? But those people are two cheeks of the same arse. That's the reality. They are the same, the white supremacists, the people who want to commit genocide anywhere in the world. Anybody who wants to make people suffer because of who they are and the way they were born, they're not a friend of mine, and they're all on the same side as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, 1,000%, and I'm glad we're on the same page on that front because it's this nuance that's necessary in these conversations. We can't just sit here and make these black and white declarations, right? And we can't say, that one side is just to blame or discount the history and the context because it's this that kind of simplistic thinking that leads to what we're seeing in Iran. That's the kind of simplistic thinking that Trump has. That's the kind of contextless, point of view that a lot of these right wingers have, and these far right coalitions, not just in Israel but in the administration as well, and in Iran, and that's what we need is to remove the simplistic thinking to get to the heart of these complex issues. We all have our emotions. We all get frustrated with what's happening, and it's easy to pick just some black and white villains here. But there's a lot of corrupt people in various institutions in countries across the globe that deserve our condemnation. And
Be
it's
angry, be angry and be outraged, but don't give in to hate. Hold on to your
yes,
humanity. I know that sounds like some hippie bullshit, right? I get it. I hear it myself. I want to be outraged. I want to give in to the anger. You can give in to the anger and you can feel it and you can be outraged and do what we're doing and criticize it. But the second that you let that fall into hate of people who have not contributed towards this in any way, shape, or form, then you are falling for the trap. And all that happens is the world goes on as it always has, with people trying to divide all of us up and separate us out based on
yes,
circumstances of birth. The one thing none of
yes.
us can.
Yep, we have to resist generalizations. We have to resist the knee-jerk reaction, the darker impulses within us to just blame entire groups of people. That's what got us here. That's what Trump's movement was defined on. That's what a lot of far-right nationalist movements are defined on. These generalizations, these appeals to our darker impulses. And one of the purposes of this pod that we do across the pond is to help appeal to people's better angels and to help
Yeah.
guide our discourse in a way that is more sane, more still, more grounded, and more willing to have the hard conversations and not just give in to the bullshit, not just clout
Yeah.
chase for outrage bait takes, and really take our time here. So, on that note, first off, everybody, thank you for being here. Appreciate you for coming to another episode of Across the Pond. Next week, I will be on a flight on the Wednesday, so we'll maybe have to skip next week, but we will see you in 2 weeks, James, and everybody
Wait.
here. Smash that like button. We're going to have some final words in a second, but let me tell everybody, smash that like button, please. It boosts us in the algorithm. And also, if you have not already, consider becoming a subscriber. You can just hit the subscribe button right up top. It right here. It will subscribe you to me and to James. And if you have not already, consider becoming a paid subscriber, whether monthly or annual, whatever you can afford, because that is what boosts this work. That's what supports it. There's a lot of the more independent journalists we have that are taken care of, by subscribers and helped and boosted. We'll be able to push back on this administration and push back on corruption because they can't take us all down. So, James,
No.
any final thoughts or final words before we close out here? Glad we did a longer episode here because we're gonna have to skip next week. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I just reflect on what we've talked about and where we've been, but also on the 2 weeks to come, because it'll be 2 weeks before you hear from us again. But in those 2 weeks, I think a lot's going to happen. I think undoubtedly now the clock is running out for Trump. These deadlines that he's creating that he then keeps having to pretend he didn't create and move on from. Time is going to run up. The world does not have enough supply of oil coming out of the Strait of Hormuz for us to last 2 weeks more. So there will be a conclusion of some kind, I imagine, in the next 2 weeks. I don't know what that will be. It'll either be a conclusion or an escalation. Let's hope it's the former. But once this is done, for God's sake, let's get back to focusing on what matters: the Epstein files, the financial corruption, the authoritarian streak in this government in the US. Let's deal with it. Let's take it on. And let's make sure that they're crippled at the midterms.
Yep, that sounds good to me. Thank you, James. And yes, Paula said in the chat, no Kings this Saturday. No Kings
Amazing.
protest. And in the US, it's going to be massive. Most likely, once again, will probably double as a anti-war protests. We're going to see millions of people likely across the country. It might go global again, like it did last time. It's really going to be remarkable. So get out there, protest, do what you
Yeah.
can. People are some people in the chat are begging for us not to skip next week. So we're going to see what we can do. I got a packed week, the first half of the week. Next week, hopefully, maybe we swing it, force it in on Thursday or Friday. We'll see.
Well, I know
people
I know you're a workaholic, so let's just see, because if you've got to keep it in, you will.
People are clamoring for it, so we'll see. Keep a lookout, subscribe. That's the only way you'll get notified. So hit the subscribe button. If we might end up doing, and we might end up fitting something in there because I can't go a week without talking to my brother James. So good to see you,
and make
man.
us proud. Make us proud over there with your No Kings Day, because we love seeing it. We get the news coverage. The more of you come out, it makes the news coverage over here. If it makes the news coverage over here, then you are getting the message out around the world, and it will. I'm not downplaying this. It will make a difference. It really will.
All right. Well, good to see you, James. Everybody, heed James' message. Get out there, protest. You make your voice heard. Okay. All right, everybody.
Enjoy paradise. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Talk to you soon, man.
See you soon, man. Bye.
All right.